But I want to welcome today Dirk and Oliver from SAP. They are here to present patterns for successful large-scale enterprise CD. And you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation. This sounds like the beginning of a big adventure, but it will just be a little presentation on basically the experience that we made at SAP introducing CICD at large scale. So today I'm here together with Oliver Nocon. I'm Dirk Luedtke. I'm at SAP responsible for the strategy of our internal CICD service. And as having said before, we would like to share some of the learnings we've made on our way. So this title expresses large scale. So let's look at what that means. First, to switch to the next slide from a customer perspective. So you might know SAP is a multinational software vendor, software provider. We are developing and selling enterprise software. I guess some impressive KPIs here on that slide. So for example, that 77% of the world's transaction revenue touches an SAP system. Fair enough. I guess that's pretty cool. But actually what really counts if we talk about CI/CD is the question if our customers are happy. Right? So customers, we have 440,000 customers. I looked it up yesterday, being working on SAP systems in 180 countries across the globe. And if I say customers, 440K customers, I'm not talking about end users, I'm talking about enterprises, companies. So basically the Forbes Global 2000 list of enterprises is on SAP. And what we experience today is, of course, that those customers are currently redesigning their business, right? So they all have embarked on a journey called digital transformation. So they changed the way they are doing business today. And honestly, this was accelerated very much last year due to the fact that we have Corona. And with Corona, everybody basically understood, okay, this is just the first thing. I need to prepare my business for the next crisis to come, be it Corona 2 or you never know. And in order to get prepared, I need a digital supply chain. And therefore, what we experience is a lot of speed in the market. So people really, our customers shortened their project plans for that digital transformation partially from years to weeks. So there's really speed in the market. And when we talk about speed, we talk about CI/CD. So the reason simply is that in order to do that or to catch up with this required speed and to do the transformation, our customers bet on us as SAP. And in the meantime, in particular, bet on our extensive cloud portfolio, consisting of many products like IoT, machine learning, business analytics, the business technology platform, and I could continue like that. So we have a huge spectrum and portfolio of cloud products, and our customers use that to win their own digital transformation. And that is why CI/CD is of strategic importance today. And this is the meaning of scale from a customer perspective. Internally, as we're looking at that, here are some numbers that express what internal scale means. So we have altogether more than 30 billion lines of code in our production system, developed by more than 30,000 developers, really coders, distributed all around the globe, working 7x24. Lots of repositories. I mean, the key point here is that those 30,000 developers kind of span up a huge range of different requirements. We have to serve different development technology, everything you can imagine that you find on the market somewhere. It's used in SAP. We have different levels of maturity, shipment cycles. So we have services that are based on progressive delivery, delivered every day. And we have, of course, bigger products where 1,000 developers work on one thing, like the business technology platform now being shipped, I guess, weekly. So a huge set of requirements coming towards us. And the question is, in this situation, what is key? And I've tried to express it here on that slide. So what is key for us? I think from a business perspective, or the real purpose of CI/CD is, of course, to reduce time to market. Okay, for a software company, that might mean something else than for example, a manufacturer or car manufacturer like Daimler. So I don't know. For a software company, CI/CD is not just something we need. It's at the end of the day, it's a differentiator. Because actually what we need to understand and what we need to learn is that to make a deal out there, it's not just about creating the next greatest feature, right? It's the question is very much who brings the idea faster and better to the end user. So it's not just about designing a better product, it's about designing a better process. This is what SAP needs to achieve to remain competitive. And as a consequence, it's very much required that we remain flexible. Honestly, we don't know which kind of process we have to design tomorrow. We need to be fully flexible. We need to stay the captain of the process. And this flexibility to design whatever we need there and to beat our competitors on the process level is absolutely a must for us. And here's the conclusion that we took. The conclusion is that as SAP today, until today, we didn't buy one of those all-in-one DevOps platforms so far. And there are many good DevOps platforms on the market. So we rather follow a strategy where we go best of breed. That means we look at the market and we rather look for best of breed, single purpose, domain specific tools that we can take and then integrate into our ecosystem. And like that, we remain responsible for designing the process. This is very important for us. So this whole aspect of flexibility. And I'm allowed to say, unfortunately, what we observe on the market is that currently the trend goes into the opposite direction. So we typically, we have many vendors and they started with a domain-specific service somewhere like binary management or whatever. Pretty nice, but they all kind of set sails and now are evolving towards becoming platform vendors. This is good, nothing against it. The problem that we sometimes have as a company is that evolving towards the all-in-one CI/CD platform, there are assumptions built into the platform, right? Assumptions, or let's say hard-coded workflows here and there, hidden here and there, and they might not fit to what we need today. In particular, they might not fit towards what we need tomorrow. And this is why we will stick to that best of breed tool technology. And we build, let's say, the platform on our own. Second aspect, which is absolutely critical for us, is compliance. So what does that mean? We sell enterprise software. And in order to sell enterprise software, we make promises to our customers. So we, for example, promise to fulfill legal regulations. We promise to fulfill industry standards. And all these promises that we make are combined at SAP in something that is called product standards, the SAP product standards, so internal regulations that basically are valid for all the products we ship. That's our promise to the customers. Hey, if you buy something here, we're enterprise ready, we promise. Now, if we want to ship daily, the consequence is that those kind of compliance assessment, hey, is our changes, our feature still compliant to our internal regulations, is becoming part of the pipeline. And as that is becoming part of the pipeline, it needs to follow the same paradigms as the other things in the pipeline. So we need to completely automate compliance. And I will, in a minute, deep dive a little bit on this topic. And last requirement, of course, is, I guess that's normal shared service provider quality or requirement is that we need to as well fulfill something for our employer SAP, namely to look at the costs, right? So of course, shared service provider, we need to look at long-term cost effectiveness. We have to support our developers with state-of-the-art 7x24 services, as they are as well expected to ship hot fixes forever, whatever they do within 5 hours. All right, those are the requirements. Actually, we follow many patterns and best practices within SAP to best fulfill those requirements. Those are 4 patterns that we now took for the presentation to deep dive a little bit on. So I will talk about our Paved Road ecosystem, best of breed CI/CD platform, and how we automate compliance on a high level. And then we take a deeper look into shared coded knowledge. I think this is the most important aspect, and therefore we will take some more time here. And here I will hand over to Oliver, who's in the call. So what does that mean? Let's talk about the paved road. And actually, I have stolen that expression because the colleagues from Netflix found a nice term to describe as well our service principles, our service mentality, and the way we as a shared service provider within SAP work. And this term is paved road. And the idea behind that is that actually we typically provide out-of-the-box turnkey solutions. Right? If a team contacts us, they get a ready-to-use end-to-end process. And ready-to-use means this is a process which is the best we know today, right? So it's reliable, it's secure, it's fast, it's based on the latest and greatest tools you would find on the market and all that stuff, right? So this is what we promise. And of course, we promise as well to always optimize that turnkey solution, that paved road. That's where we invest in. And if we are good, we manage to have 80% of our stakeholders running on the paved road. That's fine. That's basically what we are working against. It's our KPI. On the other hand, and that is expressed here, we as well motivate, or it's important for us that teams can break out. So if the paved road doesn't fit, hey, you can extend it. You can run it your own way, and that's actually something which is important for us as well, because if teams break out, they experiment, they innovate, they try out new things which might optimize the process, right? However, teams know that if they break out, that comes with a price tag, right? So for example, if you use your own tool, you are as well leaving a little bit the supported 7x24 zone, right? So the comfort zone. So you break out, you carry the cost. And therefore, typically teams come back, and then it's up to us. Then our responsibility starts as a shared service provider to look at that. Hey, is that innovative? Is that of value as a shared service for other teams as well in the SAP? And then we typically sit together with those teams and find ways to back integrate innovation into our stack. And this is the beauty about the process that is nicely as well described by the Netflix colleagues, because the beauty is that we find an engagement model between us as a shared service provider and the product engineering teams, which is based on a win-win situation, right? So we need the product engineering teams to innovate the process. They can do that much better than we. And they need us to scale up innovation company-wide. And that's the deal. That's how we work. Paved road. So, and by the way, that is also the complete idea of our ecosystem. And this ecosystem, our CI/CD stack, or the way we offer it, is illustrated here on that slide. So that might look a little bit complicated, but it's not. So you see that focusing here on the inner part, our CI/CD stack is layered and modular. And the idea behind that is, let's say, based on the need for speed versus need for flexibility, we offer different entry levels. So for example, if a team needs a ready-to-use solution fast, which is the general case for us, we offer end-to-end pipelines, pipeline templates, ready-mades as we call them, or reusable pipeline steps that you can simply include into your pipeline, right? So this is all based on the Piper framework. Again, deep dive in a minute, right? So this is what we typically offer. Teams who are maybe a little bit more advanced or mature in DevOps or have already their own pipeline are just interested in pick and choosing tools from us. So they, for example, take a GitHub or whatever we have as a service or as a tool, and they integrate that into their pipeline. So they would enter here, right? Pick a tool, typically that comes with an SLA or an API and all that stuff, or they can enter here on the orchestrator level, where we have pre-integrated tools, and then teams can just script down their pipeline. Trend that we see in SAP clearly is upwards. So more and more teams want ready-to-use solutions from us that can be extended and customized along the needs of the teams. Independent of where teams actually enter and what they use from us, what is important here is that on each level, that's expressed here, we allow teams to break out to extend. So for example, the pipeline framework is extendable. You can bring your own orchestrator. We're having teams to do so, or run your own tools. That's all allowed. And this inner ecosystem is embedded into a frame. And this frame is something we built. On the left-hand side, we have an onboarding portal that provides typical developer journeys. So you go in and you follow guided procedures, dialogues to configure your process, and you press a button, and then the whole tool chain and the pipeline is instantiated for you. And on the other hand, we have something called Insights as a Service. Our teams are working against the DORA KPIs. Right? And DORA KPIs are team KPIs. So for example, as well, we have KPIs like we want our reference pipelines to do a technical deployment in 10 minutes. So things like that. And the teams need to take care that those KPIs are met, right? Because very often that tightly relates to the product architecture and so on. We just provide teams here now with insights, monitors to actually assess the depth of maturity of their pipeline. And last but not least, the level down here or at the bottom, we have compliance and delivery. And that's something I would like to explain in a little bit more detail on the next slide. Next slide. Here we go, right? I don't know if you are in an enterprise and have, like SAP, have internal regulations to be checked as part of the CI/CD pipeline. If that's the situation, I would like to give two recommendations to you. The first recommendation I would like to give is don't build compliance into the tools. So that sounds abstract. What I mean is avoid using standard tools or open tools in a proprietary way. And this is honestly something we did in the past. We're trying to completely get away from that. And it's as well a pattern that I've seen many, many times talking to SAP customers and their CI/CD setup. So you would find everywhere companies enforcing certain ways to use Maven, for example, enforced workflows there, or companies enforcing a certain repository or org structure in GitHub or in Artifactory. And we did that as well in the past, but honestly, it's the start of many problems because typically such things don't scale. Because as soon as you start offering tools in a proprietary way just to comply to some internal standards, developers are completely confused. They don't know anymore how to use it, and Google suddenly doesn't give the answer anymore, right? So, and then the developers start looking around. Okay, who can tell me how to use that tool? Then they need to read internal wiki pages. They are not readable. Then they need to find the expert. Lots of time, right? Search time, wait time for developers to actually figure out how a tool should be used. And this is, from my experience, a key starting point for a lot of frustration and trouble. It's trouble between dev and ops, and that needs to be avoided, and it can be avoided. The second recommendation I would like to give is if you have internal regulations like we have, don't start describing them on a wiki page. It's okay to have them on a wiki page, but what is much more important is that you have those rules documented or described in a machine-readable way, because compliance is something like an airbag in the car. You don't want to see that, right? So it must be in there, but you don't want to see it. So it must be automated away. And here as well, SAP did the opposite way in the past. So we have many wiki pages, I can tell you, describing our internal regulations. They kind of read like the German tax law, right? So it's not fun for developers to read that. And then typically what happens is that the most hated or the most friendliest developer in the team takes over, or the product owner, because nobody else is found. And we're completely trying to automate that away. And therefore, we are currently running a project in SAP to turn our wiki page-based standards into something machine-readable as code. And important here is that those machine-readable compliance rules must not make any assumption on how a developer works. That must be completely decoupled. So standards define qualities, but not the way a developer should work and which tool he uses. The contract between the pipeline and the compliance system is a data contract. That is important. hey, pipeline, you can run however you want, we don't care, but I need to make a compliance assessment. I need data A, B, and C from you in order to run. And this is the contract. This is handed over by the pipeline to our compliance system, and then we check it. We check data against our rules, and we get ideas on if there is a possible deviation of a change of a feature we want to ship from our rules. And then we create transparency for the different roles, right? Is it transparency relevant for the developer? We create a GitHub issue for him. If it's transparency that is required maybe for a release manager working in the runtime, we bring transparency to the relevant tools, to the release management tools. And this is important. This is how we work today, and that heavily speeds up the way we're producing software today. Now, the question is, how do we provide all those kind of principles to 30,000 developers? And that leads to the topic of shared coded knowledge. And here I would like to hand over to you, Oliver. Stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Just sharing my screen now. Okay, yeah, shared coded knowledge or shared codified knowledge. Dirk mentioned it. We have something which we call Piper or Project Piper. You find infos on www.projectpiper.io. It started as a collaborative project already, SAP internally, inner source, involving various teams, consuming teams, providing teams, and the like. And as a collaborative approach, collaborative project run in an inner source manner, we very soon saw it could be beneficial for our customers, our partners, for other people in the CI/CD ecosystem. And that's why we open sourced it towards the end of 2017. What is it about? I typically say it's shared coded knowledge or shared codified knowledge, which is ready to use. Why do I say that? First of all, we have a layer which we call ready-made pipelines. Dirk mentioned that before. The ready-made pipelines provide essentially a complete continuous deployment pipeline to our developers, from code commit to deploy. It can run fully automatic, including functional correctness checks, security checks, compliance checks, and so on. Fully automatic from code commit to deploy. The ready-made pipelines, they use this Piper step library. It's a pipeline step library, which essentially handles the interaction with the various systems. It handles the interaction with the security scanner. It handles the interaction with the Kubernetes for deployment, with a Cloud Foundry for deployment, and with various other tooling. Underneath, we have what we call a common configuration layer. We'll look into that in a minute, in a bit more detail. This common configuration layer allows us to configure on a team side how this ready-made pipeline should behave. What kind of steps should be active? What kind of credentials should be used? Same applies for the steps, right? We need certain configuration. We still try to keep that to a bare minimum to reduce the cognitive load of a developer. But nonetheless, there is some need for some configuration, and we keep this in a common configuration layer. How does a team typically get started? We do have these ready-mades, which come as a Jenkins pipeline with one pipeline step, this Piper pipeline, something you can try yourself. Just go to the open source repository on github.com and give it a try. Next to that, we have a config file in a YAML format, which essentially describes what you're building, like what kind of build technology you're using, what kind of credentials you use for accessing a certain security scanning system, and the like. Very important, we do have this separation. We have these ready-made pipelines which are provided. That means it allows us to innovate centrally. We can provide innovations very quick, very fast to everybody out there. No real changes are required to the pipeline flow on team side. And with that, we dramatically reduce the cognitive load on team side. Nonetheless, we value very much the autonomy of teams. As you may know, that's one of the core ingredients of getting into the elite group when it comes to the DORA research. We need to have autonomous teams. That means we have this configuration in a team-owned manner, as well as the possibility for doing extensions. If the ready-made pipeline does not fit in all cases, the team is capable of writing some extension. A certain stage can be extended with an additional step, or if a certain stage doesn't fit at all, it can be overwritten by a team. For sure, taking this to the picture Dirk showed of the paved road, it's kind of leaving the paved road a bit, because in the end, it for sure increases some effort on team side. But in many cases, it's valuable. And if that's fed back into the core, it's even more valuable to everybody. Now let's have a closer look at the common configuration layer. It's extremely powerful. We do have what we call defaults, library defaults. That means this kind of configuration, default configuration, comes already with a pipeline step library of Python. For sure, this does not fit to everybody. All right, that means we can have custom defaults on top. That means if we speak about the open source project has some defaults. SAP internally, we may need to have some other defaults. That means we can override that. Also, teams or areas can provide some common shared configuration, which serves as defaults for the whole area. Then we come to the team level. On a team level, teams are capable of defining their specific configuration for a certain pipeline. We see some areas which kept this team-specific configuration to really a bare minimum. Most of the configuration is already provided by defaults. Therefore, the teams do not need to really take care about this any longer and can focus on their core task, writing proper applications, right? And last but not least, the library can be used independently as well. Therefore, it's also possible to provide individual parameters directly to the library. Now let's dive into an example. How does this feel? Versioning is a very prominent example. If you do very high frequent deployment and high frequent builds, you need to have some kind of way for automatically versioning your artifacts. That's what this artifact prepare version step does. It has some defaults. The default is a cloud-based like versioning with major minor patch added with a timestamp plus a full commit ID. Now a team can decide, I don't want to have this full commit ID. I want to have a short commit ID. That means you just put that, or the team just puts that into the configuration. It can also put that into the defaults for the specific area. In addition, the versioning for sure needs to have some notion about the build tool, since the version for Maven artifact is stored in the POM, the version for an NPM module is stored in the package JSON, and so on. Right? Therefore, we need to have a notion about that. Now, not every team is going to work in the cloud. Some teams maybe just provide libraries which need to have some versions which are easily consumable. That means also there, nothing you need to change to your flow logic of the pipeline. It's a pure configuration setting in your project-specific configuration, versioning type library. If you put that, you have a somewhere-like versioning major minor patch. Okay, I mentioned we build heavily on Jenkins. Jenkins has a big market share in the area. Therefore, it was a very, very safe bet. But we also know the market is evolving. We have the continuous delivery foundation with projects like Jenkins X, like Tecton, and so on. There's also proprietary solutions out there like GitHub Actions. Therefore, we need to make it possible that teams can use what we provide, not only on Jenkins, but also on other orchestrators. Because for sure, we know not everybody will go for Jenkins, especially not in a cloud native world. Now, what have we done? We essentially decoupled the library, the Piper step library, from Jenkins. It originally was a Jenkins library. Now it is not any longer. We have a agnostic configuration. I showed this configuration file, right? It has several sections, a general section, a step section, a stage section, where the team can specify the configuration. In this example here, building on the artifact prepare versioning, on the versioning, you see here, we have a build tool, which is npm. We have a vault reference because we want to store credentials in a way that it can be consumed on various systems. Therefore, we store that in vault. For Jenkins, we do need to provide some access credentials to the vault in order to retrieve the credentials. And then we have artifact prepare version short commit iterate true. That's the configuration. What can we do with that? We can now go into Jenkins, have a Jenkins pipeline using our Jenkins library wrapper for artifact prepare version. This artifact prepare version calls the agnostic pipeline step and executes it. We can do the same with the same configuration on a developer machine. We just call the Piper step locally. We clone the repository, we set the access credentials to vault, and we call Piper artifact prepare version. Now you probably see the power. Once we can call it on a shell, we essentially can call it on any CD system. Let's look at GitHub Actions. There's a Piper GitHub action, which also wraps that. Therefore, if we look at an action script, we again set the credentials to vault, take the GitHub action specific checkout action, and call the Piper action, taking the command artifact prepare version. You see artifact prepare version called via shell, artifact prepare version called via Jenkins, and artifact prepare version called via GitHub action, all with the same configuration. And we call this agnostic continuous delivery, which should allow also our development teams to act autonomous in a way to maybe at some point move away from Jenkins, or maybe they haven't started on Jenkins yet. They want to directly go GitHub Actions or Tecton or Azure DevOps or you name it. That's the flexibility we provide to our teams and to everybody using Piper. Having said that, to quickly sum it up, Dirk explained you the paved road principle, which is of utmost importance to us, since we want to provide some 80% guidance to teams, but nonetheless allow the teams to break out one or the other way, experiment, learn, and provide that back. For sure, we need to have a best of breed CICD CD platform and no vendor lock-in. There's compliance regulations in all areas. We want to automate this away. As Dirk mentioned with this example of the airbag, we need to have it, but we don't want to see it. And then last but not least, having shared codified knowledge, shared coded knowledge, which is ready to use in order to really reduce the cognitive load of the developers. Having said that, thank you very much and we would open up for questions.
Okay, we are a small bunch today, so I'm going to permit everybody to talk, and you're welcome to ask your question directly to the speakers. Okay, it looks like Enrique, one sec. Go ahead, ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear you.
you're audible.
Thank you very much for the demo, Dirk, and I forget the other gentleman's name, but I appreciate the demo information that you provided to us. Question for you, for both of you, is how long did it take you from going from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100? How long did it take you in time and people?
From 0 to 60. Sorry,
Yeah, how long did it take you from, one day you decided you were gonna do this project and now you're here? Did it take you like 5 years, 10 years, a year?
Difficult to answer. So that is. I personally started many years ago, right? So with all those topics, and basically I have around about 20 years of experience. So the first CICD system I've built is 20 years ago, right? But introducing.
But how long the Piper project?
The Piper project, I guess.
Okay.
Oliver,
Yeah, Piper project. I think it's, as I said, we open sourced it around 2017. Yeah. Back then it was maybe around about a year old internally, and in the end, it's a journey, right? When you start, you know your direction, but if you would have asked me in 2017, how will it look in 2021, I wouldn't have told you what it is today.
Yeah. Okay, right? Thank you.
We're really trying to move it forward in an agile way. Mm-hmm. We're being it's kind of a library, the step library, but in the end we try to operate it kind like a cloud product. We do deploys multiple times per day into the source code. The majority of teams is using the master version of it. Therefore, you can consider it like a SaaS application, right? Which is continuously evolving based on user feedbacks, based on metrics, and so on.
Okay. The interesting point here, maybe Enrique, to add is that guess how many people actually for a very long time drove that project Piper within SAP? What do you think? It's exactly one person, and he's in here, right? So that's Oliver. So it was for a very long time a one-man person, a one-man show. And the point is that I don't know how many teams contribute to it, Oliver. I guess.
Yeah, it's right that I mainly drove it. But I haven't developed all of it, right?
That's the key, right? So it's an inner source project. It started as an inner source project, and many different teams contributed. There's a high number, and then we decided to open source it. So it's really, I wouldn't say it has an owner, right? I mean, you're the owner officially, but it's a highly distributed setup within SAP, and this is the key of the success here.
It's collaborative ownership, and I think that's the key for open source projects. That's also the key for inner source projects, right? That that there's no single owner.
Now, can I ask you another question?
Belongs to us.
Sure.
Follow-up question. So when you started this project, SAP is big. I mean, I can only imagine how many people in the company. But when you started this Piper project, how long did it take you to be adopted across the organization? So that it becomes the gold standard on how software is delivered. Can you give me some color around that? Because the reason I ask is because I am in the situation right now where I'm championing a common build framework like this one. So that way, we take the responsibility away from the developers. That way they can focus on delivering features to our customers. So I'm building a common framework. That way they can just say, we just need to give us the entry point, tell us how you build your code. We'll do the rest. We'll do the configuration, the infrastructure, the execution, and the delivery of the results. So, and there's a lot of mindsets that I'm working and need to change or convince that this is the right approach, because many development teams that I'm working with, they feel like, if they don't have control of everything, then they get worry or something, right? So my job is more around, trust me that your code is safe, and we promise you we're gonna provide a repeatable process. So it's a lot of convincing, and I started this journey a year ago, and that's why my first question around how long.
Yeah, in the end, it's a multi-year journey, right? I don't have the numbers at hand, right? But but in the beginning we had kind of an exponential growth, right? We don't grow exponentially now anymore, because there's some saturation. But we started with a few teams, essentially the ones also contributing and being involved in the first area, in the first developments. And by now we are, I think, between 450, when it comes to number of executed pipelines, between 400 and 500,000 per month.
It's amazing. Well, again, thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you sharing this knowledge and the tool itself. I'm gonna be looking into it a bit more to learn how you did different things. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks
to you.
Thanks, Enrique. Do we have any other questions from the audience?